Hey guys, how's it going? It's Dan Weinberger here, CEO and co-founder of Morpheus.Network, here with an awesome video for you guys. We've talked about it a bunch of times in the past about the EUDR solution. We're going to get to as deep as we've gotten, I'd say, in a video about it. We're going to eventually show you guys a live demo of the solution as well. Today, we're talking about the background, what led us to this position with EUDR. One important person that's on the video with me right now, this is the CEO and co-founder of Confidios. We have Matthew Nelson. Matthew, please say hello to the viewers and maybe give your brief introduction as well.
Thanks, Dan, and a real pleasure to be here. Just delighted to be joining and share a bit of information on the EUDR. This has been something very close to our work at Confidios, and we're really looking forward to sharing some more about what we're doing with EUDR digital passports and supporting the Morpheus network in this very important compliance initiative.
Yeah, definitely. And how do we get over here? Really, that it's been quite a long road when it comes to the EU and its efforts in sustainability. When it comes to from a global perspective, the European Union is really at that tip of the spear of battling things like avoiding deforestation. Things like the EUDR has a whole history too. And just one day they just wake up and say we're going to make everyone stop purchasing products exhibiting deforestation. So whether it's palm oil from Brazil, obviously beef from Latin America, they have to know that these companies that are exporting into Europe, European companies eating this food and wearing these clothes, they're not being used in deforestation basically in the growing process. So we like to support that effort. When it comes to what Morpheus.Network does with our middleware and all the data that we pull in from all these different disparate systems, we're going to talk about that as well. Really lends itself well to a system like EUDR, similar to certification systems we've done in the past with customs processes or food certification. So super excited to be working on this along with Matthew and a bunch of other companies as well that become service providers for operators within the EUDR sphere. So Matthew, maybe you want to take us a little bit of background information.
Yeah, well, as you rightly pointed out, the European Union has for a very long time been quite at the forefront of environmental regulation and environmental leadership. Now, the regulatory angle of the European Union has also been well, it's an important part of the European Union. They're very strong on regulation, and the EUDR though has it's been years and years in the making. And what's really interesting, one of the key predecessor pieces of legislation is the EU timber regulations, and they've been around for well over a decade. And they've been governing the import of timber and wood and products from around the world. But very similar to the EU timber regs, the deforestation regs look at the entire supply chain, all the way out to plots of land where these 7 different agricultural commodities have been produced. And so they're also applying to every participant in these extended chains of custody for these products that are coming into the European Union. And the EUDR came into law in June of 2023. And so there's already been quite a lot of work has gone in to understanding the regulations, to implementing the traceability solutions, and actually the range of capabilities that are required by these supply chain parties to be sure that they meet these regulations. And so, but it's been quite an interesting journey over the past, coming up to 2 years now. And it's been, I have a background in financial services and regulated, very heavily regulated markets, and have seen a lot of regulation come into play. And it's quite interesting how the deforestation regulations have played out kind of similarly to what we've seen in financial service regulation. But it's quite a fast-moving space. And of course, there's been some real shifts and changes in the past few months.
Yeah, definitely. It's you mentioned the timber regulation came out in 2013. The EU has been on top of sort of making sure they keep track of these things over the years, but it wasn't heavily mandated, right? So and then they pushed out by 2050 the Paris Agreement. They wanted to complete strict climate neutrality by 2050. By 2030, completely get rid of deforestation products in the EU as well, and exporting out of the EU by 2030. And it'd be fantastic if all these different enterprises that are involved with timber and all these different products that EUDR cover want to give up their data, want to be transparent, want to make sure they're not a part of any sort of deforestation. But what we've learned over time, when it comes to even things like food certification, if there wasn't some sort of top-down approach, if they didn't mandate it that these companies had to follow these regulations, then they're a business, they're looking to make more money, and following regulations doesn't necessarily make them more money. So this top-down approach is really been great from the EU that they're pushing this out right now, and the whole world's going to follow in their footsteps with this. I was lucky enough to be part of a European Union sandbox when it comes to actually developing this EUDR solution, working with the actual regulators, so the competent authorities who allow EUDR to go through and allow the companies to be compliant, have a solution that these companies are working with to submit that data. And that's what we're sort of working on and talking about and pushing out over the next year or so. And it's not simple, right? There's a lot of complexities and pulling in all this data, lack of visibility with products, so many different stakeholders up and down every single supply chain. There's different brokers, sellers, exporters. It's passing hands all the time. And then the different data sources that we have as well. If it's something as simple as a due diligence statement, that's simple enough. All the data that comes behind that, geolocation, you've got to know, like, let's say, ownership, harvest dates. All this data has to come in together and work together as well. Let alone working with smallholder farmers in third world countries, in Africa, all around the world. You have to pull all this data together and make sure you have a complete picture of what's happening. And then we're not even talking about product transformation. When a cow becomes beef, becomes leather, moves all the way down the supply chain. We have to keep track of all these things and make sure that the product all the way down the line wasn't exhibited in deforestation. So really important things to discuss. And Matthew, I wanted to discuss, for yourself from a Postgate perspective when it comes to all these different products that you would add to, let's say, a DPP. How would you discuss that and get into detail about that as well?
Yeah, well, it's a really good question, and just to kind of build on some of the points that you just spoke about in terms of the scope and depth of the data required to actually meet these regulations. One of the key statements that I've heard over and over again, the products are guilty until proven innocent. So the regulations force the European operators or the importing companies to prove. So the burden of proof lies on those operators. And specifically, the language is really fascinating how the EU is articulating this. They are requiring adequately conclusive and verifiable information that the proofs that the products meet the regulations. And so that has a lot of, you can unpack that in a number of different ways. And it really comes down to making sure that there is a defensible proof of compliance. So the scope of data and the types of documentation is not specifically being mandated, but it has to be adequately conclusive and verifiable. And so that is the burden that's on those importing companies. But you mentioned Postgate, and this is where the meeting these obligations becomes really quite challenging. So Postgate, what does that actually mean? The European regulators and the competent authorities are describing Postgate as that period of time after which the products have already landed in the European Union. So the importing operators should have already gathered that information, carried out their due diligence and their risk assessments, but that product is then passed on to other traders or operators further down the supply chain in Europe, even before being exported, and that exports have to be compliant with the EUDR as well. But it is, how do these parties access that information, all of the due diligence and the risk assessments, to satisfy themselves that these products meet the regulations. And so that post-gate environment creates entirely new kind of digital challenges for accessing, sharing what is some pretty highly sensitive commercial information among these parties. And the real key is you don't even know who those parties are going to be. So we're looking at regulatory requirement to hold this due diligence and risk assessment data on each of these shipments for up to 5 years, and then make that available to this range of parties. You don't even know who they're going to be yet. Who's going to be handling those products? Who needs to know and examine that due diligence? And which authorities are then going to be requesting further information? So the information sharing dynamic in that post-gate world creates an entirely new data management challenge, which is fascinating. And Morpheus is in a really unique position to be able to offer digital passports in that to serve that.
Exactly. I'm very excited about this DPP, the digital product passport, being somewhat of almost like a digital twin attached to each individual product, the entire history, and anything that's added on to the future as well, constantly evolving, adding on any compliance as it changes hands, different stakeholders, everything tied in together. And of course, backed up on chain as well, so it's verifiable. All the different tech that's involved with that. You can imagine, as we mentioned, different stakeholders from around the world. How are we pulling that data in? A tool like a middleware, which is literally what Morpheus is, sitting in between all these different systems, pulling in that data together so we can create these due diligence statements or geolocations as required based on different products, based on different risk assessments as well. So all that goes into that digital product passport for each individual product, stored forever immutably. That is very exciting. At any point, you know exactly where all your products have been, who submitted the different documentation, compliances, who's responsible, all different parties. So I think that's going to be amazing. And then tying that into EUDR obviously is one amazing solution that's being pushed out, amazing regulations being pushed out. But as time goes on, they can use this data for even inventory management, supply and demand, customs processes, making life just more efficient for supply chains all around the world with so much data being leveraged and worked together. So very excited about that. Very excited about this solution as well. Maybe Matthew, I'll ask you, what would you say companies who are looking to become compliant with EUDR, if they want to become ready, to sell in Europe, basically, what do you recommend these operators? What should they do in order to work with us? What is the first step?
Yeah. So I think it's really the most important thing. It depends on which position the company holds in a supply chain, right, or in that chain of custody. And I think what's one of the most exciting things about the EUDR digital passports that Morpheus is offering is that it can be a valuable asset for a product and for a company to sell, whether they are a farmer in Argentina, a mill somewhere in Canada, or that importing company in the European Union. And so any one of those parties can use your digital passports to assemble this evidence that they're compliant with the regulations and simply make it available then to any party who's buying their product. So I think the first question for a non-European Union company is, how much of my production is ending up in the European Union, and therefore, and what is my role within this supply chain, and what information do I need to make available? Because, and I think we'll talk a bit more about this when we look at kind of the state of play of regulations and the geopolitical climate that we're all operating in. But that information that proves the product meets European regulations is a source of competitive advantage. It is effectively, we're talking about accessing the European markets with the products. So it's a compelling sales tool, almost more than a compliance automation play. So where, first of all, determining how much of your product is ending up in the European Union, and I expect that most organizations who have a role in these extended supply chains, they're already receiving requests for information from various parties up the supply chain. But what's really important as well is to understand what information is required to prove that you're meeting those obligations, and not to do more, but actually just make sure that you're meeting the obligations and that you're helping those European importers buy your product because they're meeting the regulations. And so having a kind of a guided process, clear articulation of what are the types of documentation that are required, and just having a place to upload those, store those, and make those shareable and visible up the supply chain. It's a critical approach to addressing the issues.
Fantastic answer, Matthew. And my view on it is that if I was, let's say, a company that's going to sell in the EU and I wanted to become compliant, and I'm a specialist in whatever product I have, and I'm not a specialist when it comes to EUDR, I don't know what documents to supply in that sense. I would go to EUDRs.supply, which has a lot of information about it. They can reach out to myself, the entire team of Morpheus, as well as Confidios. We can have that initial conversation, get you on the platform. We actually have a solution, Suite.supply, which allows companies to actually track their shipments all the way down the supply chain with a simple QR code. And we attach all that data to our EUDR.supply module as well. So you get that DPP connection while you're actually tracking your supply chains all at the same time. So we actually have dozens of solutions. So please go to Morpheus.Network if you want to read more. Morpheus.Network, sorry about that. And EUDR.supply specifically to read more about the EUDR solution, and Suite.supply, which actually tackles all these different solutions that we have tied into one, including this EUDR solution. So Matthew, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me and giving us some amazing information on EUDR. This is going to be the first video of a series of videos we're going to do when it comes to EUDR, as well as the actual solution itself. We're going to get into that as well. Anything else you want to say to the viewers while we have them right now?
Well, I think that it's just very exciting to see the rapid evolution of Morpheus.Network and all of the capabilities that you guys are bringing to play in the whole supply chain track and trace space. And I think the ability to prove this compliance and actually have that passport access to European markets is something that is probably going to take on a new light in terms of the geopolitical and trade war situation that we're dealing with today, because there is significant supply chain disruption today, and tariffs impacting the prices of goods into various markets. There are a lot of companies around the world who are rapidly going to be needing to find new markets for their products. And so there's a real opportunity to use a digital-first platform like Morpheus.Network to capture this information and make it visible and retain access to those markets, deepen those wallets with European buyers.
Exactly right. And listen, when it comes to Matthew's being very kind when it comes to geopolitical issues, there's always comes some pain with that as well. So inefficiency in your supply chain, you can't compound your pain with that as well. So that's what we're trying to do, make things easy and more efficient with all these different things going on in the world, which are out of our control and out of your control as well. But we could make our supply chains more efficient along the way. And what's awesome that we've built over the last 7 years with Morpheus, all these different partnerships and connections and technologies we've integrated into our platform. We can leverage these technologies in order to make EUDR that much easier to pull in all that data as well. One such connection, for example, is our Trust.supply solution. All the different validations on the back end. We have an amazing group of masternode holders who are allowing this data to be extra trusted. So thank you for those masternode holders as well. Thank you to Confidios and their entire team for really doing some amazing work along with the Morpheus team as well. And of course, everybody, thank you for watching and have a great day.